Good morning and welcome to our panel. My name is Adrian Lam. I'm going to be your moderator today. I am wearing two hats today. One as a partner at BioWorld Ventures, which is an operating studio based out of Hong Kong. And the other is as a president and CEO of a company called CorVista Health, which is bringing a diagnostic technology and ability to diagnose coronary disease and pulmonary hypertension in the outpatient setting. I am delighted to be on this panel and honored. And our main question today is really, exploring the success that we see in biotech in terms of cross-border innovation, in terms of transactions, in terms of financings, and trying to understand why or whether that is applicable to medtech and any lessons that we can learn from that. And so without further ado, may I ask the panelists to give a short introduction of themselves?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Cynthia Chen from Pulnovo Medical. Pulnovo, we are a global medical device company focusing on two disease indications, pulmonary hypertension and heart failure. So currently, we're globally structured in the US, Singapore, Hong Kong, and mainland China, with three robust global clinical programs ongoing, including 2 FDA studies. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hanson Gifford. I've been in the medical device industry for over 40 years. For the last 27 years, I've led the Foundry, where we do a lot of innovation and also look for ideas globally and start a series of companies in a wide variety of clinical spaces, bringing new medical device technologies to market. I'm also a partner at Lightstone Ventures.
Hi, I'm Alexis from Cornerstone Robotics. So we're a 6-year company based out of Hong Kong, focused on laparoscopic surgical robots. So last year we received NMPA product approval, and this year is our first year of commercialization.
Great. Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. So, going to jump straight into it. This morning at the Medtronic panel, actually, we heard that half, I believe, of the global deals this year are actually related to Chinese companies or China innovation. That is definitely a lot of biotech deals. So one thing we want to ask is and explore is, why is it a matter of time in medtech, or are there structural problems there? And maybe we can ask the two innovators first. The three innovators, but the ones running companies right now. So, Cynthia?
Well, I think starting early this year, we've heard a lot of questions from investors asking the same thing. But from a corporate perspective, time alone won't fix what the system isn't designed to achieve. So what we've been saying in medtech is that we have fundamentally different underlying mechanism as biotech, and just because we just finished this big Series C round, and it's just really hard to find all those risk capitals willing to deploy into globalization companies with bigger ambitions and goals. For example, when we go out and talk to investors on our global FDA studies, all of them are excited, but only I think I've actually met with more than 100 investors for our Series C, and by the end of the day, 10 of them give us a term sheet, and eventually 4 of them make the final decision. So I think we see without enough funding and without enough systematic policy support, it's just really hard for a medtech innovator to not only focusing on the incremental change, the UV improvements, or to maximize the current treatment, eventually to moving the treatment paradigm. So it's both time and also both infrastructure problems that we're seeing here.
Maybe just a quick follow-up before we switch to Alexis. You said you met all these investors. You represent a very viable and interesting, novel, first-in-class kind of technology. What is the response for turning you down that you see a lot? Is it just, I don't believe it, or just too new? I don't think too new is a problem, right? What responses do you see?
So, being the first one, it's good or bad. The most questions that being asked during all our financing process is why Medtronic isn't in this, why Boston isn't in this, and why we're not seeing any of the American company catching up soon, why a Chinese company. But on the other side of the conversation, we can also see that there are a lot of expectation out of the investors to see that, we will have an Asian leading innovation medical device company coming up to the market soon. But it's just very hard for them to make the first bet on this journey.
Suppose it's the early bird who gets the worm, but the second mouse that gets the cheese, right? What they say. So, Alexis, any comment here about medtech, following that biotech path?
Sure. So from our perspective, it's a matter of time and process. So of course, in our space in laparoscopic surgical robots, there's obviously a dominant player in Intuitive Surgical ahead of us over the last 15, 20 plus years. So again, we're also in our Series C round, and we've met a lot of investors as well. To echo what Cynthia just mentioned, a lot of the questions that we face are how will a company break out of this dominant sort of landscape and come out as a second dominant player within this space, right? And within this type of current situation, a lot of investors will look for us for more data, right? More commercialization data, etc. And that's really something that only time can bring, because as we're all very aware in the medtech space, it's a very long process to actually get through, no matter it be R&D or through the whole commercialization cycle.
Yeah. Any comment here as an
Yeah.
authority in it?
Well, as the old guy on the panel, maybe it's worth just taking a moment to look at the history. It was just a few years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago, that all of the American, Western companies looked up and said, wait a minute, there's a huge opportunity in China. We should go sell there. And they got there and they said, this is tricky. And it was taking longer. And all of a sudden there started to be some local competitors. And then there were like so many companies copying everything that was made in the West very quickly and bringing it to market in China very quickly. And now, it's really happened so quickly in the big scheme of things. It takes 20 years to bring a real dramatic new innovation from idea to really market, launch, and acceptance. And within less time than that, you have a whole new industry. And yes, there is innovation happening. And, a lot of it, there is innovation everywhere in the world. There are bright people, there are physicians, surgeons every day who are looking at what they're doing and saying, how can we do it better? It doesn't just happen at academic medical centers or in certain countries or whatever. Every doctor out there is thinking about how this can be done better. And Cynthia, your founder, your father, I saw him 10 plus years ago, I was mentioning yesterday, at TCT presenting this idea of pulmonary denervation. So it didn't come out of nowhere. It is the result of innovation that was happening a long time ago and is now reaching fruition. And I'm quite sure there are many more stories across China of that kind of innovation that's been real true innovation, new physiologic insights, that we'll be seeing soon. And so, it's this panel is very timely. It's going to start happening much more.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think there's absolutely the innovation here everywhere, and you see that now. I think there are infrastructure and the ecosystem, I suppose, factors that could continue to help, and I think will eventually help more to translate that raw material into patient impact, right? But it clearly takes a very long journey, Now, sort of a related question is, in a way, when you develop a new technology, you're obviously going to go for a home market first, right? For many, many reasons, but competition is just so fierce in China. And so how do you kind of balance taking that high risk, innovative strategy, yet there's so much you got to survive that first, but also raise enough money and live and survive for long enough to win, and then you go abroad. How are you managing that process right now between sort of winning at home and or going straight abroad? Maybe Alexis first.
Sure. Thank you, Adrian. So from our perspective, it's important to move forward on all fronts. Um, Nowadays, I think winning domestically isn't necessarily enough either. You do need to have a go-to-market strategy on a global stage. But of course, as a startup, resources are always very limited. And of course, as a home base in your domestic market, you'll have more ways to leverage said resources to be able to move a bit quicker. So yes, from our perspective, we always think about what we want in terms of our end goal. So as a co-founder in a company, there are always certain shortcuts that can be taken throughout the process of developing your company. So one key decision that we've made in our development is we've focused on developing everything in-house. So this, while it made our process quite a bit longer, the risk quite a bit higher up front, but what it's given us is the flexibility now to really have high product quality, high product integration, low cost, and also supply chain resilience. So I think this is important to keep in mind when we balance these factors while moving forward on all fronts. Keep in mind where the end goal is, and then make sure we're always moving forward and determined towards that goal.
Yeah, Cynthia.
So, coming back to Pulnovo, I actually agree with Alexis that it's very important to go upfront to all the markets right now. And Pulnovo's strategy across the years is we're focusing more on precision, but not proliferation. We're focusing more on depth, not breadth. We deep dive into 2 indications, pulmonary hypertension and heart failure, but we march it all across the continental. So, because we know from the early experiences that US FDA, CE, they need earlier IP and data validation. So we actually begin to prepare for our ID application while we're waiting for our NMPA approval. We actually begin our China biggest heart failure trial while we also launch this European pilot study to bridge the gap, the timely gap between all the per all the agency's requirement. So it seems like we accumulated our tremendous data here in China, but we actually march through the company to the next stage altogether. And for us, focusing on 2 indications, not chasing headlines with like 20 pipelines, is actually the best way for us to maximize our clinical capacity, commercial potential, and also execution efficacy. So we're kind of taking a different strategy here, is that we're going all across, but deep dive into 2 indication, 2 pipelines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe Hanson, a slightly different flavor to that same question. You are, trying to identify these unmet needs everywhere and trying to develop solutions for that. Do you take a differential view to sort of Asia, versus the domestic market, or is it just the world is just world?
Well, different answers for different clinical needs. Obviously, there are some variations across the world. We have typically focused on the U.S. market as the biggest opportunity and the quickest way to access a critical mass. I think we still have a lot to learn about how to access the China market. It is great that the China market is big enough that you can build a very nice business as a Chinese-focused company. I think European companies, frankly, struggle with that. And they mostly are thinking about how are they going to get to the U.S. as a way to really build a successful business, rather than trying to just build a home market in France or Germany or something. So it's an advantage here. But overall, I mean, a company that we identified here in Singapore, LSI Therapeutics, which has remarkable technology for sustained release of drugs in a bioabsorbable form. The fact that was based here in Singapore, it didn't matter at all. We're working with them. There's a team of 20 folks here at LA, Singapore, working in concert with a team in the U.S. So we're 100% flexible. We have a company in Ireland, so we are really thinking globally. At the same time, terms of real commercial success, U.S. approval is a big milestone for virtually all of our companies. I think that may evolve over time, but that's where we are now.
Got it. So for LSI Therapeutics,
Yeah.
just a follow-up question. It's sourced from Singapore.
Yes.
And the first market that you're targeting is the U.S.?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
And not concurrently or simultaneously doing anything in Asia?
It costs so much to run a clinical trial.
Of course.
That you have to pick your battles. And so I think that's the next step. We'll get the initial readout of our first pivotal randomized trial in the U.S., our phase 2b trial, later this month. And I think then we'll start thinking about how do we address other markets.
Got it. Are there, as you, as the Foundry, so many innovations have come out from your group. In the U.S., the fundamental tech transfer and innovation translation mechanism is more mature and quite different to other geographies. In China, for instance, not that much innovation comes out in that way from academia, and then you license out through the tech transfer office. Are there any inspirations that we can learn and from what we've seen in the US that you think could work well in this region of the world, and what might not work as well?
So certainly, and this is even more so in the biotech world, everything seems to come out of academic research labs and go from there. The Foundry specifically, has taken a much more broad approach of looking for the best ideas, focusing again on the anatomy and physiology and how to solve that problem. And we don't care where the ideas come from, whether we invent it or someone else, whether they're at one university or another. We have licensed things from universities across the U.S., from doctors in England and France, with LA from right here in Singapore. So we're very open and tend to look, first at the idea and how it's going to address the need, and secondly at who cares where it comes from. And there's always a way to make that work. So I don't know if that academic licensing approach needs to be replicated here. If physicians are operating more directly or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah. Do you think the infrastructure in Asia is, obviously it's different in different countries, but do you think that early translational infrastructure is mature enough right now that you're seeing LSI Therapeutics, for instance, that early next step after you've identified the IP? Do you see sufficient support and help from the ecosystem, or do you really need to do everything back at home?
So I've been super impressed by the Singapore medtech ecosystem. Obviously, there's been a lot of academic level research and idea generation. It has taken some time to see those things translate. There's a more recent focus on manufacturing and operations. which I think will serve them very well. I think those pieces, we'll start to see that come together and see things translate more aggressively here. In China, the situation is so dynamic. The whole economy is growing so fast. Everything is new. Everything is open to innovation and looking to create the next innovation. You have two examples right here. I'm envious, frankly. The maturity of the U.S. market is maybe not as inducive of really exciting new things. So,
Yeah, interesting. Maybe back to Alexis and Cynthia. Do you as you were on your journey, your earlier journey, did you feel the infrastructure was mature enough? Did you get enough early support? Enough preclinical advisors? Enough preclinical research groups that can help you? And could you access the right animal trial centers? Did you have access to good board members and advisors? What problems did you see, or were you pleasantly surprised, as Hanson mentioned? Maybe Alexis first.
Sure. So let me start. Yeah, I think especially early on when we decided to found the company, we did take a lot of time to think about where would be the best place to do this. And some of the factors that we thought about were, some of the ones that you just mentioned, because the medtech space does require a whole ecosystem to really build a successful company. So, I mean, first of all, you need, talent, right? So you're looking at the higher universities, higher educations, these type of institutions. In throughout the medtech prototyping stage, you require, clinical, preclinical work. So, animal labs, these types of institutions. So after looking at these aspects, we found really that Hong Kong and the GBA area, so Hong Kong and Shenzhen, really were the perfect fertile ground for a medtech startup, because Hong Kong has these top universities in the world, right? You have hospital networks, and then nowadays we're seeing more and more that clinicians and professors are really willing to also delve into the startup ecosystem, startup space as well. So they get involved with us very early on to work with us throughout the prototyping process, throughout the preclinical process. And then, of course, after the R&D stage, Shenzhen sort of has one of the best electronics, mechatronics manufacturing in the whole world. And that really is... it's a lot easier to have these types of resources available to us throughout this whole process, as opposed to having to discover and create too many things ourselves.
Right. Maybe just a follow-up question on that, right? So you have ambitions for international markets, right? I believe you're doing some research and trials in Europe.
Yes, yeah. So we have a trial running right now in the UK, and we're actively moving towards a CE marking.
Right. So my question for you, Alexis, is you've mentioned the importance of vertical integration, sort of owning a lot of the supply chain, and being able to manage that risk well. Now, obviously, in this day and age, with everything fun that's going on,
yes,
do you have and people talk about dual sourcing, right? How to manage supply chain risk, but if you're doing everything in-house, and then you have to dual source, that's a lot of supply chain and manufacturing investment and time. Like, how do you practically execute that, right? You can't dual source everything, can you? And especially for robotics too, with so many components.
Great question. Yeah, so especially in our field, certain components are actually not readily available. So different from, let's say, for example, the automobile industry, everything is pretty generic in a sense. You're able to source most components from a variety of suppliers. But actually, in at least the surgical robotics space, a lot of the supply chain is actually still being built up. So we're taking a part in this process, working with a lot of these manufacturers to develop these customized parts for surgical robots. And of course, of course, together with testing equipment and the sort. But yes, a lot of times it's actually forced. If you can't find something that can fit your clinical needs, your clinical requirements, then you sort of have to go the in-house route. And of course, as a startup, especially a few years ago, not a lot of capital, not a lot of time, no history. It's actually very difficult working with established companies to work together with you in providing key components. So in that sense, I think sometimes the timeline, these risk factors actually forces a company to really innovate internally to make it happen. It's not easy, of course, but then once you're able to do it, then you sort of reap all the benefits of that. So nowadays, and you just mentioned geopolitical type macro situations. By having this type of supply chain resiliency, we're actually immune to a lot of that because we have a lot of flexibility in who we work with because we still own the core underlying technology to our systems.
Yeah. All right. Cynthia, maybe a related question. I know you also have, international ambitions, and you're taking first steps towards that now, or for some time. Do you have to build completely the same vertically integrated infrastructure, in an outside of China market, or is there quite a lot of transferable skill sets and capabilities that you can leverage? How are you thinking about international expansion?
So I think it really takes us some time to figure it out. Because unlike many biotech or medtech company, Pulnovo actually started a long time ago. Because Hanson mentioned the first time people hear about PADN, that was like more than a decade ago. And the company was established in 2013, and that's the time that we got our first angel investor in, and we didn't go fundraising for the next 8 years. So we don't know, back to 10 years ago, back to the time that we don't know if we can build a global company. But what we know is that because diseases are global, so the innovation to cure those diseases should be global too. So what we've been doing for all those 8 years is that continue to keep the clinical rigor, publish as many as data as we can, make our presence on all these global conferences. So I remember that back to 2017, that's the first time that we actually presented the first in-man study from China to OrbiMed US with Carl Gordon's team. And OrbiMed was like, we were very interested. Show us the pivotal trial data and talk to us again in few more years. And like 4 years later, they joined us as our first investors in. So and it just took us a long time to figure out which pathway we need to go and which market we are prioritizing first. And an NMPA approval actually came earlier than FDA, but we always seen ourselves as a global company with earlier China presence because of the regulatory approval path. So coming back to today, we are a 140 people team sitting in China, and we have built up a fully functional team to support all our global footprints. And currently, we're building up a U.S. dedicated clinical team to full speed accelerate the FDA trials that we're doing right now. So I think our job is to basically replicate what we've been doing in China for the past 5 years on all other markets. I don't think that's actually only due to the geopolitical challenges that we've been seeing throughout the years. It's just that we need to have the cultural adaptability to Americanize all the clinical practices in the cath lab and also the corporate management style that we've been saying in building Pulnovo into a global company.
Yeah. A slightly different flavor to that same question to Hanson. You're building Allay Therapeutics. Do you find that managing that project is fundamentally quite different to, say, just a typical project that you've done before? Like, evolve?
You're talking about drug delivery?
No, I'm
Or
talking
the
more
fact the
about
international...
yeah, I'm talking about kind of running the project, maybe hiring for it, how you think about partnering, that process of growing this baby. Is it quite different, or is it kind of just the same, just in a different place?
Well, I think in the case of LA, the differences are more in that it is a sustained release drug delivery company, and you think the regulatory quality challenges, preclinical work in the medical device space is challenging. It's like 4 times as much when you're talking about drug delivery, and especially sustained release drug delivery. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that is being done both in California and here in Singapore. I think in terms of managing the team, we are blessed to have a fantastic team here in Singapore. Super responsive, super supportive, super, really just capable, and so it really hasn't been a challenge. In fact, sometimes it goes better because the team in California works all day, and then they hand off to Singapore and they work all night, or all their day, and then back and forth, and things happen even faster. So,
right, it could actually be a benefit.
It's exciting. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we found the same actually in a previous experience where, it's because of that East Coast and Asia time difference, you're basically the company is working around the clock, so to speak, Now, switching gears a little bit to just what the near future, and what we might find interesting in the near term. I feel like medtech is always a like there's a presence of battlefields. 4 years ago it's very much structural heart, right? Aortic and mitral and even tricuspid, and then it was lithotripsy, and then there was denervation, renal denervation, and definitely recently is PFA. What do you guys all think as like sort of the next big thing, and in terms of medtech? Maybe Hanson first.
Okay. Well, I don't see an overarching, singular focus emerging. If there is one, it is robotics. There's been so much work that's been done, both in the public and behind the scenes over the last 10 years, and we're just going to see a lot of those things in clinical trials competing, and it'll be fascinating to see how that market evolves a lot over the next 5 years. So that's probably the epicenter. But I think there's going to be a lot of new things. And just to come back to the title of the talk, can medtech replicate biotech's Asia playbook, which has been a huge source of innovation, new companies, new things over the past few years? I think that's not even a question. I mean, just look at this meeting. Look at all the companies here doing great things, and I think, to be honest, the U.S. is up against some challenges. There has been a slowdown in acquisitions, which means a slowdown in money returned to the ecosystem, which means that more of the money ends up being focused on fewer companies to help those get all the way to profitability. And I think Asia is coming with fresh energy, fresh ideas, and also fresh money that will allow them to enter the stage and fill that gap. So,
yeah. A follow-up question for the two of you, actually, which is on this robotics topic. I would tend to agree. It's obviously very, very interesting now, but there's a juggernaut there, and that juggernaut seems to be very resilient. And so, a question for both of you: this robotics, is there enough room for other companies to emerge? And do you see it as niche robots, more application specific or therapeutic area specific robots, or do you think there's going to be a lot of just general surgery robots that can compete?
Sure. Let me take a hack at that, since that's sort of our interest area. So of course the surgical robotics market is huge. So we absolutely believe that there's room for many players within this space. I think, the dominant player, if you look at their financials, they have very steady growth still. So I think all signs point towards an unmet need still within the whole global market. And then, of course, I think to your second question about uh, what role robotics will play in terms of, is it going to be niche applications? Is it going to be generic applications? It really depends on the cost value proposition that's being made. So of course, if you're talking about higher priced capital equipment, then it's likely that it needs to cover more of these surgical areas, surgical procedures. Otherwise, it's difficult from a procedure case volume perspective, from a use perspective within the hospital, to justify that type of business case. But then, of course, if you're talking about, cheaper robotics or lower cost robotics, maybe there's an argument that can be made where a niche procedure is sufficient for that equation to work out for the market.
Yeah, I'm seeing the market going after all of those opportunities. Going right after intuitive, going after the robotic surgical assistant market. There are a number of companies there, and then specific surgery. Robotic cataract surgery. And they're looking at full robotics, not just haptic controlled devices, but robotic brain surgery, robotic. Each area has specific needs, different products. So we'll see. As you made a key point, all of these things do have to prove clinical value, and the healthcare system has to find the money for each of these. Will they? I mean, so far they found the money for intuitive, and we'll see if they find the money to take the robots everywhere else.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
I think so. At the end of the day, I believe there were some talks today or at this conference that also talked about sort of the payment schemes behind all of this medtech innovations, the reimbursement schemes behind it. That's really key for this industry to keep moving forward, not just in the U.S. but globally. How are these schemes going to be developed further to allow for these innovative devices, new medtech devices, biotech devices, to really get into the market and have a healthy economics behind it.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to time soon, and so I want to leave a tiny bit of time to see if there's anything else that panelists want to add in particular. And if not,
any questions out there?
Yeah, the questions to the floor. Sure. Dr. Adrian.
Yes, it's a question for Hans. Adrian Chen, interventional cardiologist. Use some of the products that you use some of the products that you incubated. Thank you very much. I'm also a partner of Adrian Lam in BioWorld. So, question is, the reimbursement landscape is changing. Health systems are recognizing that it's unsustainable. Really, everyone is trying to get into the US as the first market, but then the US is starting to say, "Hey, let's stop this. We need to reduce prices, reduce costs here." And China has been doing that already ahead of time. India, same thing. Europe is progressive as well. So what's going to happen here? There's less money for innovation. Is there going to be a global slowdown like at this rate, or are we just going to get more efficient? Are you seeing that trend?
I think that's a really important question. The U.S. has just allowed prices to be high and pay those high prices and leave it alone. Is that sustainable? I think it's sustainable for a while longer. I think there will be attempts to cut costs in other ways in the healthcare system rather than directly attacking drug and device prices. I think the China approach of, as soon as there are a whole lot of any one procedure, going to tenders and driving the price down, on the one hand, takes money out of our ecosystem. On the other hand, it makes it a healthy market that is very sustainable. And importantly, it drives the companies to be ever in search of that new innovation, which will still be given a high value. Pulnovo coming to market, you don't have competitors, and hopefully you can keep your prices at a very attractive rate for a long time in China. So even as it pressures the ecosystem, it encourages innovation, I would say, hopefully.
Yeah. Any thoughts from Alexis or Cynthia on this?
So maybe nothing related to Dr. Adrian's question, but more so back to the topics that we have today. So I think, as a MedTech person here, I don't think we actually need to replicate what we've been saying about tech. It's just a matter of if Asian MedTech company can actually become a global lead in many perspectives. Success is not only about the discovery, it's about the scalability and eventually the commercial success. And I think all these non-trivial barriers are actually what makes MedTech innovation harder, slower, but deeper. But I think we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, we are now at time, so I just want to thank everyone, thank the panelists. Please give a round of applause. Yeah. And thank you very much for hosting us today. All right.